Here we are back at the Nerdarchy.
I'm Ted.
I'm Dave.
And, we're going to talk today about superhero movies, if you will. There's been, obviously, for those of you who are out there, well aware of the rise in movies dedicated to our famous superheroes. And with this revitalization has brought those who never had an interest, or like ourselves, who read comic books when we were younger, but kind of got out of it. It breathed new life and new vigor back into that hobby or that interest. I started reading comics when I was in middle school, 7th, 8th grade, and it was a way to, okay, here's something to entertain myself. And after a couple of years of reading it, obviously it was draining on the budget, because you buy more comic books, you'd find a new title, and now you got to buy another one every week or every month. And I then got into novels, which had more character depth, more story, and everything all at once. So I don't know how you wound up coming in or going out.
Well, I started reading comics, and it's funny because the way I got into comics was actually because I started playing role-playing games. And it harkens back to the Marvel TSR yellow phase rip box, and really, we were playing the characters right out of the box. So, someone had already picked Thor, and someone already picked the Hulk, and I didn't know much about comics at the time. All I knew was there's a big shaggy guy that was like as strong as those guys, so I wanted to be him. But then I wanted to know about him, right? So, the character was Sasquatch from a title called Alpha Flight. Because, what we're talking about is
superheroes.
Canadian superheroes. So what we're talking about here is this renaissance of the superhero comic book genre, right? And how we kind of got started with it, and how we got into it. So for me, again, it was role-playing games that pushed me to go, hey, here's a cool character that's kind of strong. I want to be him, so I want to know more. So I went to my local comic book store and said, hey, what about this guy? And then he was able to tell me, the title it was, and point me in the right direction and give me some backstory. And the really cool thing is, I happened to just pick that title at the right time, because I was able to get all the back issues without spending a fortune. I was probably in my early teens at the time when I started reading comic books, and I read comics all the way up to my early 20s. And like Ted said, for the same reasons, some of the same reasons, I stopped reading comics because it became expensive, to be honest with you, at the time. I would go in, the release days were a Tuesday and a Thursday, and I would be there both days picking up titles, and I was picking up Marvel, Dark Horse, DC, Image, primarily Marvel, but I was still hitting these other ones a lot, and then towards the end, I was getting a lot of Image. I was grabbing all the titles. They put together some really innovative stuff at the time.
I didn't get into the actual tabletop role playing until after I was already heavily involved into the comics, and because typically the tabletop stuff is sold at your local comic shop, I would go in to pick up new gaming supplies, and every once in a while I'd look over at the comics and kind of look back wistfully, and it wasn't until I wound up seeing some of these Image comics that I actually wound up getting back into it a little bit. My favorite Image comic is still hands down Shadowhawk. I think he was one of their least successful titles, but I thought he was the most compelling. Very, very, very close, akin to Batman, but did things in a very different manner. And I just thought the character was incredibly compelling. But again, we got out of the comic books to go down another avenue, and it's with this resurgence of movies that are almost thrust down our face. You can't help but, I've got to go watch that. And we're here to, kind of talk about, the Marvel stuff that has, come down the pike recently. You want to go chronological or just shoot it out there?
Well, honestly, I think I think we should back up a little bit, because even before the movies came back, I think there was something pulling us back into the genre. To be honest with you, for me, it was actually DC, which I only ever read a couple titles from DC. It was like my least favorite of the publishers, but it was DC that got me back into comics, back into the superhero genre. With when they did Justice League, and then I think it was either season 3 or season 2. I'm not sure which one, where they crossed over to Justice League Unlimited. It was 3, yeah. So I was in love. I was a grown man, couldn't wait for Saturday night, because the Justice League show would come on, and I watched them. And then they stopped being aired on Cartoon Network, and I was like a crack addict, going through withdrawal. So I went out and I bought all the seasons, and I think I'm the one that said, "Hey Ted, you got to look at this stuff. It's really good."
Yeah, I totally borrowed it. I watched it, multiple times. I then went out and bought my own copy. I think, as far as animated series goes, it's hands down one of the best series that's out there. Total thumbs up. Buy it if you don't already have it.
Then from there, I think what happened was both Marvel and DC were releasing animated movies. DC's animated movies are way better than Marvel's, in my opinion, and that kind of like kept it going for me. So I was like getting my fix without spending over $100 a month on comic books, because that's where I was towards the end. When I finally cut it off, I was like, oh my God, I'm spending $30, $50 a week on comic books and going every week.
And I guess that's where the surgeons came from you, where you kept saying, well, how about we try a superhero game? How about we try a superhero game? And as we said in some of our other videos, we wound up bouncing around from system to system until we found a superhero game that we like. But go watch the other videos. You can hear all about that.
Right, and subscribe, like, comment. We have the information out there. You can get it. But right now, again, we're talking about the superhero genre, we're talking about comic books, we're talking about TV, we're talking about movies. And it isn't until recently, aside from some of the animated stuff, that we have anything good to sink our teeth into.
Yeah. Growing up, I read X-Men and its little offshoots almost exclusively. I loved Wolverine and his, him being the underdog. The actual comic book character, he was 5'6", and yeah, he was muscular, and strong for a human, but he wasn't, he wasn't one of these, superhero, with super strength kind of characters. At least, not while I was reading him. And if you collected the superhero, collector cards, he was, there's all the, he fought him, and he fought him, and he fought him, and he lost, and he lost, and he lost, and he lost. It's like, man, why is this guy so popular if he's always losing all the time? This is a guy doesn't give up. But as I watched all, as I read all of these, X-Men stuff, there was a lot of intrigue going on, a lot of plot, and it was clearly, a successful title, and that's where, the X-Men movies come into it. And I watched the first X-Men movie, actually heard tale of them thinking about an X-Men movie when I was in high school. And my comic book friends or people who were into superheroes, we talked about, who would they get for, and who would they get for? And of course, everybody is like, of course, Patrick Stewart is the only possible option for Professor Xavier. And, yeah, that's where they eventually went, 10 years later. But you've got a really huge backlog of stories that they could choose to work with in their established arsenal of storylines that they've already created and already worked with. And when they came up with the X-Men script, they had a decision to make. It was, do we offer something new, or do we offer something that we've done? And by the looks of it, they decided they wanted to do something new. And they offered up what hopefully everybody who's watching this has already seen, because we're going to talk about it, and if not, spoiler alert. And other than the first movie, which I give a nice little applause to, it wasn't spectacular, but it wasn't crap. Everything beyond that just starts doing a nosedive.
So, what came first, Spider-Man or X-Men? I don't remember.
I think X-Men.
Okay, because here's one of the problems I'm having is I was watching the Spider-Man 2 trailer the other day, and I'm watching it, right, and I forgot that I was actually watching Spider-Man 2 trailer. I just knew I was watching the Spider-Man trailer, and I'm like, is this a reboot for Spider-Man, or is it a sequel? I can't remember because, there's so many reboots that they've done already over the last 10 years. It's ridiculous. It just shows that they haven't figured out the recipe, and they keep trying to. And then comes along, some of the DC movies, but more so the Marvel movies, recently with the Avengers and Iron Man and Captain America and the latest release of Incredible Hulk, where they seem to have found the recipe. They seem to figure things out, where they're not constantly going, oh, well, we almost had it. Let's do it over again.
Well, I absolutely think that every single movie that falls into the Avengers block, spectacular. I highly recommend. Come on, you shouldn't be watching this if you haven't seen those movies, because I don't understand why you wouldn't. But there's hardly anything that I could complain about with any of them. With the X stuff, with the Spider-Man movies, with the other movie that supposedly was about the Incredible Hulk. I think it was just called Hulk. They went wrong somewhere, and it could have been at let's do this movie, because.
Well, I can actually answer some of those questions for you too, but here, and there's a lot of other movies in there. You didn't even mention Ghost Rider, Punisher, Daredevil. There was a lot of bad ones that weren't done by Marvel Studios. And also with the reboots too, like I've been doing a little bit of research on this, and see what happens is the studios that have licensed these rights to the characters, if they don't produce a movie in a certain time period, or at least start filming it, the rights reverse back to the original owner. In those cases, Marvel. So what happens is it's almost like sometimes they're just doing a movie to do a movie and not lose the rights. And so what happens is us, the fans, really suffer because it's a subpar movie, or what we're going to talk about in the next video, a lot of these movies suffer from. So hit the subscribe button, like, comment, let us know your thoughts, let us know what you want us to talk about, and we'll get with you on the next video. This is Dave.
This is Ted. Later.